What is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is the original cryptocurrency. Bitcoin was created by Satoshi Nakamoto. Bitcoin is the largest cryptocurrency in existence. It is the original gangster. Where do we begin? Okay, so what made Bitcoin so special? With Bitcoin, they solved digital programmable money. They created a way to basically have electronic cash that could be sent from one person to another. With Bitcoin, you don't need any permission to utilize this new cryptocurrency. Simply, all you need is a wallet on one end and a wallet on the other end, and then the value can be freely exchanged. Unlike a credit card or a bank transfer that requires an intermediary to process the transaction and can also reverse a transaction, with Bitcoin, you can't reverse transactions. It's called the transactions in the Bitcoin network are considered immutable. Once they take place, they can never be undone. If you, by accident, send too much Bitcoin to someone, you can't call the bank of Bitcoin and ask them to refund you your money. Instead, you're going to have to contact the receiver and ask them to send back the mistaken amount, and trust comes into that. So be very careful when you're sending around Bitcoin to make sure that you know who you're sending it to, like the address is correct for it, and B, that you send the right amount. Now, Bitcoin, unlike traditional fiat currency, has a scarce limit. There are only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoins in existence. We're currently at about 19 million Bitcoins have been issued to date, and there's only 2 million that will be issued, in the rest of our lifetimes. The way that Bitcoin works is that there's a group of computers out there that are called Bitcoin miners. And all the miners are doing is they're trying to solve a really complicated math problem. And it's very hard to solve the problem, but it's very, very easy to verify the answer. So all these computers, you can imagine they're all working together trying to solve this problem. And when one of them gets the problem, they announce to everybody else, look, I solved the problem. And then they take all the transactions that have happened in the last 10 minutes, in the case of Bitcoin, and they put them into the block. And that block is stored in the Bitcoin blockchain, which is the public immutable ledger of all transactions that have ever taken place on the Bitcoin network. Now, when I send a transaction from myself to yourself, it's not Kyle is sending Jane, 1 Bitcoin. It's this long string of numbers and letters is sending this long string of numbers and letters 1 Bitcoin. The world can see that, but only I really know my address, and I only know that, Jane is on the receiving end, and that is her address. Bitcoin has really transformed the world. It has opened up this concept of digital programmable cash. So unlike the cash that we carry around in our wallets, which can be given from one person to another in the physical realm, Bitcoin enables us to have a similar experience, but in the digital realm. I no longer need to be in direct contact with you in order to give you cash. All I need is your address, and then it doesn't matter where you are on the planet. I can send Bitcoin from one of my addresses to one of your addresses. There's nobody that can get in the middle of the transaction and say, no, this transaction is not allowed. In order to set up a Bitcoin wallet, you don't need to provide your identity. You don't need to provide personal information about that, which means it's a very inclusive system that allows anybody to participate in it. I said it's also immutable, and it's also scarce, meaning there is a set amount that there will only ever be, which means unlike the Federal Reserve and the traditional banking system that can print money as they feel like it, with Bitcoin, there isn't that power for an individual to print money. Where does the new Bitcoin come from? That's a very good question. The new Bitcoin is issued as a reward to the computers that are mining Bitcoin. As I mentioned before, these are the computers that are trying to solve this hard problem. The computer that solves the problem, it is then rewarded with, in the beginning, it was 50 Bitcoins every time a block was solved. It then went to 25 Bitcoins. It then went to 12 and a half Bitcoins. These are the block rewards. This is the new issuance of Bitcoin. Over time, the inflation rate it halves. Every approximately 4 years, the Bitcoin rate of inflation halves, and it's going to keep halving until there's no new Bitcoin left to be issued. Now, in addition to the actual Bitcoin being issued, when you make a transaction on the network, to prioritize your transaction so that the miners include it into the blocks, you put a very small transaction fee onto your transaction. And that isn't a percentage fee like a bank or Visa might charge you. Instead, it's a fixed fee. And that fee can range from a couple cents when the network's quiet to a couple dollars or maybe $10, when the network's very busy. We've seen over time different levels of fees, but overall there's some advances that are taking place towards bringing the fees down and creating more scalability of the Bitcoin network. Now, one of the favorite descriptions that I was once given about Bitcoin was by a man named Andreas Antonopoulos, who's a great thought leader within this space. And he described Bitcoin as a sewer rat. That doesn't sound very nice, but what it means is that Bitcoin has had absolutely everything thrown at it. It has been faced, relentless attacks by hackers seeking exploits, and as an open source project that has such value attached to it, it's what I call anti-fragile. Like a sewer rat is anti-fragile. The more you throw at it and try and attack it, the stronger it gets, the more resistant it gets. And that's why Bitcoin is considered a sewer rat, because it has had everything thrown at it, and yet it continues to survive. The network has never gone down. Now, you may have heard of hacks taking place within the Bitcoin ecosystem, but those usually involve exchanges being hacked or individuals having access to their wallets being compromised. The Bitcoin network itself has never been hacked. So let's move on to the next question, which is, how do you acquire Bitcoin?